Well, good afternoon, everybody. I was about to say this is a good crowd, a good class. As a teacher, a lot of times as I'm getting ready to start class, all my students are down on their phones. I'm looking out here, just as we're getting ready to start, everybody's talking to one another. I'd rather everyone talk to one another than be, excluding one another on their phones. So it's good that everybody can come together. I can see that friends are seeing friends again. People were talking and enjoying the company. So that's always warm to see that happen. And that's what we want, because in this world today, it's so much easier not to interact with anybody, and definitely not to interact with a smile. So we take that for what it's worth and enjoy the time that we share. But again, good afternoon and welcome to the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe Counties, Rosa Parks and John Lewis Award ceremony. And if you know anything about these awards celebrate and honor the men and women who have fostered a culture of inclusion in the Asheville community, and that they have worked to achieve a just society for the disadvantaged, and they exemplify a nonviolent philosophy in pursuit of a better life for non-majority people. And also, the main thing is they inspire direct action in the cause of social justice. When we think about this, we really began doing these awards 6 years ago, right in the middle of the pandemic, 2020. Our first class of award recipients had to do it via YouTube. They had to tape their acceptance and had to go and deliver the awards. And that first in 2020 was Rosa Parks. And then 3 years later, we started John Lewis. And so we've been trying to go forward with that, but it's something that started with some difficulties, that pandemic, that seclusion, but it kept on going forward. And I think that also says a testament of our community, the resilience that things are going to get tough, but we're going to find a way to push through. And so if you don't know, my name is Jonathan McCoy, and I'm the vice president of the MLK Association, and I'm also chair of our COPE committee, which means Community Outreach Providing Empowerment. It's part of our association that tries to do different activities, as in the John Lewis and the Rosa Parks Awards. We also do the Juneteenth celebration. So it's other events that we do besides the breakfast, and how that we can work in liaison with other organizations in the community to help them in the support of working for nonviolence, but mainly for social justice and for uplifting the community and unity. And in that, you really think about the words history and legacy tend to go hand in hand. In Webster's dictionary, it defines history as a branch of knowledge that records and explains past events, while the dictionary then goes on to define legacy as something received from an ancestor. And so I take that to heart. Again, I guess my day job is I'm a history professor at Mars Hill University, and so you see that's why I'm pulling in that history and legacy, because I take that to heart when I really start thinking about these awards. When we talk about the Rosa Parks Award, it's an important reminder of the truth that sometimes gets overlooked. The truth that the inspirational and foundational importance that women have in our communities. A lot of times in history, you're going to hear a lot about the men, and the women get overlooked. But as we know, in the reality, if it wasn't for women leading the way, the men would be left behind. I always tell my class, I said, it's amazing, as a young male, and again, I deal with a lot of first-year students. I said, if you think about it, if it wasn't for women, us men wouldn't be here. I said, because we're the ones that are going to climb up on the roof, and somebody's going to jump and make it, and so then everybody else is going to get inspired and jump and then wonder why they got a broke leg and everything. I said, a bunch of guys are going to do that. I said, if it wasn't for women to keep us calm and direct us, I said, where would we be? And so I think it's very important to keep that reminder about the Rosa Parks Awards. It's really honoring the inspirational and foundational importance of women in our community, that their voices and actions are real-life examples of how to speak up and act for the greater good of all. You think about it, Rosa Parks was an educator at heart. Not only was her mother a teacher, but she herself had attended Alabama State Teachers College for Negroes, which later became known as Alabama State University. She was studying to be a teacher, but unfortunately she had to leave the college because her grandmother got sick, and she left to take care of her grandmother and never returned to finish her studies to become a teacher. But she was an educator at heart. And that's easy to overlook because the main thing a lot of people remember was that in 1955, Rosa Parks was arrested for refusing to give up her seat, refusing to go to the back of the bus. And that refusal and her arrest is what sparked the 13-month-long Montgomery bus boycott that really brings Dr. King into the forefront and limelight of the nation. But Rosa Parks' actions, her refusal to give up her seat, wasn't just happenstance. You know, a lot of times we want to say, oh, she was just tired and she did it. No, it wasn't. It was more intentional than that. Again, things that people overlook, especially with women, and understanding that how they are the backbone of our community and how their actions speak louder than words, is that you have to remember that Rosa Parks was the secretary of the Montgomery chapter of the NAACP. She had been in meetings and she not only took notes, but she had been vocal in civil rights actions throughout not just Montgomery, but throughout Alabama. She was a noted organizer and leader in civil rights in the state. And so that's what really sparked the boycott, was that it started getting around in town that they arrested Miss Parks. And that's what got everybody upset. How could they do that to her? Because everybody knew who she was, because she had been working in the community for social justice. But it also is important to remember something else. We always like to note the first, but we have to understand how the first really gets to happen. Because in a lot of ways, Rosa Parks was not the first. She was the second, but she was the first that the powers that be thought that it would work, that the boycott would work out, that actually they would get traction. But 9 months before Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat, there was a 15-year-old girl named Claudette Colvin who was also arrested for not giving up her seat. Now, the reason that it wasn't seen to push her story was that not that she was 15 years old, but that she was 15 years old and pregnant, and she wasn't married. And so how would it look to have this teenage, unwed mother as the face of the movement, of the boycott? And so that's why they didn't really push her narrative. I'm not saying that Rosa Parks jumped in and took her thing, but also I think it's always important to note that there were others doing that work also. And sadly, Claudette Colvin passed away this year on January 13th. She passed away. But we also want to honor her pioneering spirit. Because repeatedly we are reminded that women are not followers. They're strong leaders. They're leaders who set the standard for community activism. And this is why when we do the Rosa Parks Awards, why we do it in March, because March is Women's History Month. Doing it in March and doing it during Women's History Month, it helps us call out and center and celebrate the audacious actions of Claudette Colvin and Rosa Parks that has inspired women like our honorees tonight, inspired them to do tireless work for social justice and for the betterment of our communities. A lot of times it's long hours, a lot of times there's no thanks, and so that's why these awards are important, because we want to take the time and have the focus to thank them for all they do. Now, it used to be that we had the John Lewis Awards in February because that was Black History Month, and we had Rosa Parks in March because of, again, let's say, Women's History Month. But truth be told, you know, coming out of January and all that we do for the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, three days of events, it was hard for us to really get everything ready in February. And then we really started talking about it and said, well, we're really talking about two people that were community activists. Why not have a joint ceremony? And so that's why we ended up with John Lewis and Rosa Parks Awards coming together on the same day. And I just want you to know that as deliberate, because as I was telling one of our honorees, sometimes we don't realize how our efforts impact others. Sometimes we don't realize that somebody is watching what you say and do. And that's the case with this. Because without Rosa Parks' efforts, without what Rosa Parks did, you can really argue in a way Dr. King's influence may not have been as widespread. Again, Dr. King was reluctant to even be a part of this movement and even to lead this movement. He had to be talked into it. So if you really think about it, without Rosa Parks, you could really credibly argue there was no King. And that's important because, again, this impact, when you start looking down the chain, if Dr. King's message and his efforts wasn't as widespread, because if there hadn't been the efforts of Rosa Parks, then there probably wouldn't have been a John Lewis. Because John Lewis was 15 years old, living in Troy, Alabama, not too far from Montgomery, and he would listen to the radio and listen to Dr. King's sermons. And he would read the paper and read the coverage of the boycott. And hearing King and reading what they were doing in that boycott inspired John Lewis to make a choice of how he wanted to live his life. He decided that he was going to work for social justice. And so in 1957, I was looking, I said, 57, okay, in 55 he was 15, 57 he was 17, but then I said, well, he must have been like me. I was 17 when I went off to college. And in 57, he went off to the American Baptist Theological Seminary in Nashville, Tennessee, with the intent to study how to be a community organizer and a social justice warrior. Because there he learned about nonviolent protests, and he helped to organize sit-ins at the segregated lunch counties that were there in Nashville, Tennessee. And he was arrested for those demonstrations. Later on, he went on in 1961 to be part of the Freedom Rides, part of those college students that rode throughout the South, pushing integration in the bus terminals, facing the Klan as they would burn the buses or meet them and beat them. In 1963, John Lewis became the chairman of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, known as SNCC. SNCC was inspired by those 4 college students from North Carolina A&T as they went to the Woolworth to try to integrate the lunch counter there. College students from around North Carolina started doing the same thing, and SNCC was born to organize and plan sit-ins across the nation for college students. And as I said, in '63, John Lewis became their chairman. In that same year, he was also a member of what was known as the Big Six. The Big Six leaders of the civil rights movement who planned, organized, and orchestrated the March on Washington. It's noted that John Lewis spoke at that Washington. Again, we always remember Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech from that, but John Lewis was the youngest speaker there on the steps of the Lincoln Monument. In '65, along with Hosea Williams, he led the march from Selma to Montgomery. Now, most people remember the Selma March for what happened as those marchers came across the Edmund Pettus Bridge when they were attacked by state troopers, local police, and local Klansmen. Lewis himself was one that suffered a fractured skull. And you see those pictures and videos of those marchers being beaten. And that became known as Bloody Sunday, and it really was seen by historians as what really pushed through the 1965 Voting Rights Act. And in 1986, he was elected to the House of Representatives, representing Georgia's 5th District there out of Atlanta, and he served from '86 through 2020. In 2020, he passed away from pancreatic cancer. But when you think about this, while we're here today, we're thinking about how Rosa Parks, Colette Colvin, and John Lewis not only created history, but they also passed on a legacy of activism that is continuing to inspire others to continue their work. People like today's honorees. And so at this time, I'd like to introduce our 2026 Rosa Parks Award recipients. Because our first honoree embodies the legacy of educators being leaders inside and outside of the classroom. Like I said earlier, Rosa Parks wanted to be a teacher. But also we see with our Rosa Parks Award honorees, we've had Dr. Therese Ruffin and Dr. Dolly Jenkins Mullen, both known educators here in the community who have been doing this work. Our first Rosa Parks Award honoree is Nicole Cush. Nicole is a lifelong educator. This former high school principal has dedicated her career to expanding opportunities for young people and creating spaces where every voice belongs. She is the founder of the Glitter Sisters Incorporated, It's a mentorship and leadership initiative that strengthens belonging, civic engagement, and pathways to opportunity for youth and emerging leaders. She also provides leadership training and coaching through Courage Collective Circles, which guides educators and organizations in cooperative leadership with the principles of collective courage and community empowerment. Nicole serves as an event coordinator for the Red Rug Round Table series with TEDx Asheville, and she is the executive board catalyst with Leaf Global Arts, helping cultivate conversations, cultural exchange, and creative spaces that bring people together and inspire action for the more equitable future. I present Nicole Cush.
Wow, what an honor. Thank you so much. Yes, being an educator is in my blood, and those amazing ladies that you mentioned who are in this city and the ones before us, our ancestors and Rosa, it's an honor to be named from such a light and to be a light. So thank you, all of you, for being here tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Our next Rosa Parks Award recipient is continuing the legacy of community activism that has been shown by previous Rosa Parks Award recipients like Sophie Dixon and Renee White. Priscilla Robinson. Priscilla Robinson is a native of the Southside community of Asheville who is dedicated to social responsibility and actively working to empower, educate, and advocate for the community. 18 years ago, she began researching the impact of urban renewal. After being asked the question, what is the pulse of your city? Why are the Black people so standoffish and angry? What happened here? While pursuing her master's degree in management and leadership at Montreat College, she started collecting stories from the community elders and galvanizing interest among community members around the topic of the impact of urban renewal. Her efforts are rooted in collaborating with others, be they individuals or organizations. In 2024, the Historic Resources Commission of Asheville and Buncombe County recognized Priscilla's outstanding efforts and honored her as the Historic Resources Champion. And in 2025, a documentary honoring her work entitled Urban Renewal Impact, the movie, and produced by the filmmaker Todd Gregg, was released. As I said, it can be found on www.urbanrenewalimmpact.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Priscilla Robinson.
Good evening. Thank you. When I listened to the history of Miss Rosa Parks, I almost started crying. It's just such an honor to stand on her shoulders. And I just thank God. I first thank God for being here. It's an honor once again. I thank God for each and every one of you here witnessing this moment.
Thank you. Again, ladies, thank you both for all the work that you do. If we can give you another. Now it's time to introduce our 2026 John Lewis Award honorees. Our first recipient is following the legacy of Native sons working to helping Asheville, like members of our first John Lewis Award class, recipients like Al Whiteside, and like his grandfather, Matthew Bacote Jr. Honoree Michael Bacote is a proud fifth-generation Asheville resident, living out his family's legacy of community service. He has served on the board of directors of the Asheville Buncombe Community Relations Council and as an inaugural member of the City of Asheville's Human Relations Commission. He's also dedicated 11 years of service as a member of the Buncombe County Board of Adjustment, helping guide thoughtful and equitable development across the county. Today, he serves as president of the Asheville Area Habitat for Humanity Board of Directors and as chair of the Asheville Housing Authority. Michael was a founding board member of the Asheville Peak Academy, but his commitment to children and families extends beyond education. For more than a decade, Michael has volunteered as a guardian and led him advocating in family court for abused and neglected children. I give you Michael Bacote.
I'd like to thank the Academy. Thank you, Dr. Simmons and the Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County. When they read that bio, you'd think I was 80 years old, but I'm not. But as I indicated, those who can simply must do. And the Lord has blessed me and been so gracious that I would be, and it's a selfish motivation, I do want to go to heaven. When you turn on your TV every day, there's got to be something better than this, and that's what I want. So again, thank you all. Congratulations to all the other honorees.
Our next John Lewis Award honoree is fulfilling the legacy of members of the Divine Nine, serving the public. Like our 2025 John Lewis Award honorees, we had Mega Sci-Fi Incorporated member Bernard Offelin, and we had Lonnie Gillen of Alpha Phi Alpha Incorporated. D. Tyrell McGregor is our honoree. D. Tyrell is a native of Greensboro, North Carolina, who is the Parks and Recreation Director of the City of Asheville. Throughout his career, he has constantly championed the idea that parks must serve as inclusive front yards for all citizens, regardless of their social-economic status. Under his leadership, the department has successfully increased the gender and racial diversity of the staff to ensure that the workforce reflects the community. And he has guided the creation of a 10-year system-wide plan for long-term investments in parks and community centers. Since arriving in Asheville, D. Tyrell has served as a board member for the Asheville City Schools Foundation and has been involved with the Buncombe County Juvenile Crime Prevention Council and with the Alphas of Asheville, which is the Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated chapter here. I give you D. Tyrell.
When you receive Academy, you have to have it. There you go, there you go. I had to take a few notes. First off, every morning my prayer is not me, but you, God. So I hope that the goodness that you're seeing is a direct reflection of God's grace and blessings on my life. Last month, February, I stood before City Council and made them aware of some of the Black History events happening within Asheville Parks and Rec, and I kind of ended that spiel with reasons why I'm enjoying my time in Asheville. And those reasons include simple things that we take for granted, like we have a YMI, we have the block, we have a Legacy Neighborhood Coalition, we have a Black in Asheville film, we have the MLK Association. My point is, we have a storied and celebrated history here in Asheville. And my career as a Parks and Rec professional has taken me across the country, and that's not the case everywhere. That's not the case in a lot of the communities where I live. So, and it's what I grew up with in Greensboro, North Carolina. So to be absent from that for a number of years and to come back to my home state in a place where, yes, we have a lot of opportunities to do better, and we must, and I will continue in my role with the city as a Parks and Rec professional to do so. But I'm also hopeful because we have these amazing opportunities to highlight and celebrate the legacy of Black people in the Appalachian Mountains. I think that's special. So I want to say thank you to my wife. Y'all, my family is small. It's just the two of us, and she is my #1 cheerleader. So I want to give a big props and thank you to Carla Cruz McGirt. We gotta just recognize Dr. Simmons for the vision you had with creating an MLK Association all those years ago. Your vision, along with the work of everyone associated with the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Association of Asheville and Buncombe County, is amazing. So thank you all, the organization, for the recognition. Thank you to the city of Asheville. I see we have our vice mayor here for the opportunity to serve as the Parks and Recreation Director. And lastly, you mentioned it, I want to thank you to the brothers of Alpha Phi Alpha Fraternity Incorporated, the Alphas of Asheville. It is awesome to come into a community brand new, not know anyone, but to have a brotherhood, a group of people you can immediately tap into. And I see Brother Gilliam in the audience. I've been receiving texts and emails all day from my Alpha brothers. So just thank you to the Alphas for their recognition, and congratulations. Thank you.
If we can, we'll take a moment, if we can just thank our recipients one more time for all that they've